with the first chapter, but several pages in. The first few pages, I don't know, 5 or 6, describe kind of Harry's emotional state during the summer up to this point, okay? And he's not having a good summer so far. He's in contact with Ron and Hermione, but what kind of letters does he receive from them? What kind of information does he receive from them? And what is it specifically he's hoping to hear?
News about Voldemort.
News about Voldemort. Because he's spending the summer so far watching the evening news, reading the newspaper. He's taken out a subscription to the Daily Prophet. How much of it is he actually reading? Front page, back page. He doesn't read anything else. Okay? What's he expecting to be going on? Murder, mayhem, people disappearing. After all, previous book, Sirius talks with them at Hogsmeade, and he tells them, as also Mr. Weasley said at the Quidditch World Cup, the last time Voldemort rose to power, what happened? Disappearances, murders, all the time, everywhere. Okay? Well, here he's seeing Voldemort rise to power again. I mean, literally rise out of a cauldron. So he's expecting chaos. And there's nothing. And he can't find anything out. It's not like he can ask his aunt and uncle. So he's frustrated and angry. Okay? And he's being kept in the dark, page 10. The injustice of it all welled up inside him so that he wanted to yell with fury. If it hadn't been for him, nobody would even have known Voldemort was back. See, part of the thing he's dealing with is he feels like he's being shunted aside and ignored. And yet, as even Dumbledore acknowledged at the end of the previous book, at the end of the previous year, what? Harry bore a grown man's burden. He shouldered more than most wizards have ever done before. And now, he's being treated, he thinks again, like a kid. Okay? So what does he do? He leaves the house, and he goes off to the garden. I talked about this last week, I think it was. You know, you got houses like this, you got streets that come through here, okay, and here, and in the middle is this big garden or park, okay? Harry goes off to the garden and park. Why? Because he knows Dudley and his gang are going to go there. And so he goes and he sits on a swing. And Dudley's friends come in. They turn around. They do some stuff. And Harry's thinking, page 11. Come on. Look around. Come on. Look around. I'm sitting here all alone. Come and have a go. Okay, Dudley's got 6 or 7 of his friends with him. What's Dudley look like now? As opposed to books 4, 3, 2, and 1. It's a nice way of putting it. He's not fat. Now he's what? Now he's ripped. He's the Southeast boxing champion. Okay? So he's gone from being the size of a baby killer whale to Rocky. A young Rocky, but Rocky Balboa. Okay? If Dudley's friends, notice page 11, saw him sitting here, they would be sure to make a beeline for him. What are they used to being able to do to Harry? That's why his glasses are always broken. Okay? But what would Dudley do? He wouldn't want to lose face in front of the gang, but he'd be terrified of provoking Harry. Why? It would be really fun to watch Dudley's dilemma, to taunt him, watch him, with him powerless to respond. And if any of the others tried hitting Harry, well, Harry was ready. He had his wand. Let him try. What's he going to do? Pull his wand out and start hexing him? Because what's going to happen school-wise? Okay? He'd love to do what? To vent some of his frustration on the boys who had once made his life hell. Now, notice that verb, vent. What does it mean to vent? Okay? He's going to let it out where? Okay, specifically, he's going to put it in someone. Okay? Have we seen something like that already in the stories? Where? Okay, but that's later. Though Dumbledore does tell Harry at the end of book 2, the night you got that scar, Voldemort transferred some of his powers into you. Harry interprets that and restates it. He put a bit of himself into me. Notice, Harry's is a little bit more accurate than Dumbledore's. Okay? Where else do we see it? What does Dumbledore use the pensive for? What about memories? Okay, is it to store them? Does he put them in here to keep them safe so he doesn't forget them? Okay. It's so that he says, sometimes your mind gets overfull, and so you need to take some thoughts off. And Harry's like, oh, okay, whatever. And so he takes those excess thoughts off and puts them over here. What's he doing? He's venting his mind. Notice, Harry's doing the same thing now. Okay? When does Harry's scar hurt? Two things. When Voldemort is nearby, or how? When Voldemort's happy, feeling love, does Harry's scar hurt?
Very happy or very mad.
Yeah. But is he ever really happy? It's when he's angry that Harry's scar burns. Why? Because that's an element of this venting because of what's inside here. The Horcrux that we're going to learn about later. See, what Harry's doing here is he's kind of acting like a little Voldemort. He's making Dudley feel what? Or he wants to make, let me rephrase it, because he hasn't done it yet. He wants to make Dudley feel what?
Terror.
Okay, it's not quite terror.
Powerless.
Is it powerless?
Helplessness.
Close. Frustration. Anger. He wants Dudley to experience what he's experiencing. Why? Because then Harry will feel better. Okay? Remember at the end of The Lord of the Rings? Very end of Lord of the Rings. Saruman is talking to Frodo, just outside Frodo's home. And he says, you've robbed me of my victory. Now I'll have to go, but I'll still have one happy thought. And my happy thought will be that I've so damaged the Shire. And Frodo says, if that's what gives you joy, then I pity you all the more. Okay? Harry's kind of acting like Saruman here. So, they don't turn around, and we're told at the bottom of page 11, Harry mastered the impulse to call after them. What does that mean? He masters that impulse. What's he practicing?
Self-control.
Self-control. This is probably the most important idea in this novel. Harry has to learn self-control. He's going to go on to school fairly shortly. He's going to meet Professor Umbridge. First day of class, he's going to smart off to her. How exactly is he going to smart off to her? He doesn't only say she's wrong. He calls her a liar, and he tells her to shut up. Stands up in class. Why? Because she says Cedric Diggory died by an accident. That Lord Voldemort isn't really back. And Harry says, shut up. And she, signs out a little detention slip, gives it to Harry to take to McGonagall. He takes it to McGonagall. And she's like, come on, Potter, use your common sense. Surely you know what this woman is. Whoosh. Nope, he doesn't have a clue. He doesn't have much common sense. Okay? So she has to explain it to him. And she tells him, you must learn to control yourself. Okay? Where has he had to control himself in books 1 through 4? Okay. But even there, does he? What happens to Aunt Marge? Okay. He doesn't really. And nobody really tells him to control himself. Why? Because in those books, he's growing into his abilities, into his talents. He's learning them. Okay? Now we already know his abilities and talents. How do we know them? How does book 4 end? He defeats Voldemort. This time it's not an accident. I mean, this is intentional. He makes that little bead of light go back into Voldemort's wand. You've got to realize that when that happens, Voldemort's probably like, oh shit. I can't believe he did that. Because he's trying to push the bead the other direction. And Harry pushes it back. Voldemort realizes at that point, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. Okay? So, Harry masters the impulse to call after them. Why? Seeking a fight. Not a smart move. Must not use magic. Risking expulsion. So, he follows Dudley and his gang, and Dudley's gang break off, and Harry overhears their conversation. And he hears one of the members of the gang, well, he hears Piers, Polkus, say, "Nice right hook, Big D." They all leave. Harry comes up behind him. "Hey, Big D." Dudley turns around. "Oh, it's you. So how long you been Big D then?" "Shut it. Cool name, but you'll always be Ickle Diddykins to me." Who's Ickle Diddykins? Isn't that what Aunt Petunia has called him before? Yes. Okay. Shut it. Don't the boys know that's what your mom calls you? Shut your face. You don't tell her to shut her face. What's Harry doing? He's doing the exact thing he was thinking of in the previous book. He's taunting Dudley. Why? Because the veins on Dudley's neck are starting to bulge. His fingers are starting to twitch. He's getting ready to form fists. But Harry knows Dudley can't take a swing at me. Why not? Because Dudley knows Harry's got something in his inside pocket. The effort of keeping himself, this is Dudley now being talked about. Dudley said nothing. Middle of, whatever that page is, 13. The effort of keeping himself from hitting Harry seemed to be demanding all his self-control. Notice, Dudley's practicing self-control. Is Harry at this point? No. Harry's just, going with the flow. He's, just going to let it rip for a while. "So you've been beating up tonight?" Another 10-year-old. How old's Dudley? A year older than Harry. Okay. Beating up a 10-year-old? And he's the boxing champion of the Southeast? What, against 10-year-olds? He was asking for it. Oh, yeah? He cheeked me. Meaning, he smarted off to me. Did he say you look like a pig that's been taught to walk on its hind legs? Because that's not cheek, Dud. That's true. A muscle twitching in Dudley's jaw. It gave Harry, notice this, enormous satisfaction to know how furious he was making Dudley. Enormous satisfaction means Harry's kind of like, oh, yes. Like the Emperor in the Star Wars. That's it. Give in to the dark side. I can feel it. Harry's just getting off on this. Meanwhile, Dudley is just ready. He felt as though he was siphoning off his own frustration into his cousin, the only outlet he had. They walked down the street. So what else is Harry doing? If he's siphoning off his frustration into Dudley, is he, to quote Dumbledore, transferring some of his powers? Maybe not his wizardly powers, but his emotions, definitely. So how different is Harry than Voldemort? Well, in this book, not a lot. Why not? Okay, keep going. True. Why else? That's reason one, let's say. Keep going. Okay. Voldemort's back, right? Every other time when Voldemort was quote-unquote around, he wasn't back, per se. He had the weird baby-like body thing, the thing on the back of Quirrell's head. Okay. But now he's back, full-grown, fully developed man. He can wave a wand. He can say Avada Kedavra. Okay. So the connection between Harry and Voldemort is what? It is much stronger than it has been. All right. You ever notice in this book how much Harry yells? All caps. Why? Is it only because Harry's 15? That is part of it. Harry's 15. His body's going through changes. You know, he loves Cho. Cho doesn't love him back. They have a confused relationship. All that nonsense. Okay? It's also because of his connection to Voldemort. So, he goes off with Dudley, heads back to Privet Drive. How does Dudley get back at Harry? Before then. Because he does that when?
He brings up Cedric.
But that's after the Dementors come. He thinks Harry's doing it, so he punched him. Okay? He brings up Cedric. You're not such a tough man at night. What do you mean? It is night, Dud. It's what we call when it gets dark like this. He goes, no, when you're in bed moaning for Cedric. Ooh, Cedric. What's Cedric? Your boyfriend or something? Wand out. Harry, he's ready at that point. Okay? Notice, Harry doesn't like that. Why not? What did Voldemort do? Previous book, there in the cemetery. He taunts Harry. Cruciatus curse on him. Harry's sitting there twitching on the ground. Voldemort stops and goes, you don't like that, do you, Harry? You don't want me to do that again, do you, Harry? Answer me, Harry. Tries imperious. Harry won't answer. Okay? So, then it does get dark. Lights go out, moon goes out, stars go out. Harry suddenly realizes, Dementors. Dudley tells Harry to stop it. Harry says, I'm not doing it. Dudley punches him, knocks his glasses off, knocks his wand out of his hand. Harry realizes there are Dementors, and a Dementor comes to get Harry. He tries the Expecto Patronum, top of 18, and all he gets is a little silvery wisp of vapor. Come on, concentrate. Next time, not very good. Then he starts to hear laughter inside his head. Why? Memories. Bow to death, Harry. Might even be payments. I would not know. Notice, at least these memories replace Lily, take James, run. I'll hold them off. He was never going to see Ron and Hermione again. And that creates his happy thought. I hate how she does Expecto Patronum. It's so Disney. All he needs is pixie dust. Pixie dust and a happy thought, and everything will be okay again. So, he thinks Ron and Hermione. And boom, that stag bursts out of his wand and goes off and takes care of the Dementors. And who shows up? Crazy old Lady Fig, okay, who's been his babysitter for as long as he can remember. And he suddenly realizes this is the Fig that Dumbledore was talking about at the end of the previous book. Okay? She and Mundungus Fletcher were supposed to be keeping an eye on Harry, so why didn't she stop the Dementors?
Because she's a squib.
She can't, because she's a squib. So, Harry gets back to number 4 Privet Drive with Dudley, and what start arriving? Almost immediately.
Letters.
Owls. Bringing letters. What's the first letter from the Ministry of Magic say? Let's just condense it down to 2 words. You're screwed. Why? You're going to be expelled, and we're going to take your wand. So you don't get to go back to Hogwarts, which is where he thinks he belongs, and you're no longer going to be able to do magic. What's Harry think? Like hell. He's going to go to his room, he's going to get his stuff, he's going to hold his wand out, and then other letters start coming, telling him, Dumbledore's trying to make it right, page 28, don't leave your aunt and uncle's house, don't do any more magic, don't surrender your wand. Harry's thinking, okay, So how am I supposed to do those last two things? How am I supposed to not surrender my wand and not do magic? Am I supposed to say no? A lot of good that's going to do. Okay? So he tells Vernon, Petunia, what caused Dudley to be the way he is now. Dementors, page 31. Vernon, a couple of, what's this codswallop? Harry, notice how he does this. Make sure I get that. No, he doesn't. Dementors. Okay? Says it nice and slowly so Vernon can understand. Why else does he do this? Because I think Rowling wants us to see what this really means. D, out of, away. You have to put those together, however. Ment means mind, thought, or agents of. So, agents of what? Doing away with the mind. Doing away with the thought. What is a mentor? Every one of you have one. Called your advisor. What does your advisor do? Tells you what courses you need to take in order to graduate on time. Okay? When to fill out forms, all that kind of stuff. What's a mentor? A mentor does that. A mentor also does what? A mentor can teach. A mentor can guide. A mentor builds up your mind. The dementors tear down your mind. And what the ruddy hell are dementors? They guard the wizard prison Azkaban. Petunia says. Harry's like, what? Where'd this come from? 2 seconds ringing silence followed these words. And then Aunt Petunia puts her hand over her mouth like she can't believe she said that. How do you know that? Harry asks. I heard that awful boy telling her about them years ago. Who does Harry assume that awful boy is? If you mean my mom and dad, why don't you use their names? Because we come to understand in books 6 and 7, it's not her mom and dad. Okay? Harry was stunned, except for one outburst years ago, in that course in which Aunt Petunia had screamed that Harry's mother had been a freak. He'd never heard her mention her sister. When was that, by the way?
That was when he was getting taken away by Hagrid.
Exactly. First book. They're at the hut, on the rock in the sea, and she says, of course I knew what you are. Of course I knew what my sister was. Freak that she was, coming home from school with frog spawn and blah, 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 blah. My parents loved her, blah, blah, blah. She was a freak, etc. Okay? We're going to get to a point where Harry's talking about what's going on. He was astounded she had remembered this scrap of information about the magical world when she usually put all her energies into pretending it didn't exist. Notice, she has to do what? She has to consciously tell herself it's not real. All right? Another letter comes from Mafalda Hopkirk. You won't be expelled. Your wand won't be taken. You will have a disciplinary hearing. Okay? He gets another letter from Sirius. Don't leave the house. And Harry's thinking, page 35. He's getting angry because all these letters are all saying, don't do, don't do, don't do. And nobody's saying, well done, Harry. 2 Dementors in Surrey. So, Harry says he must have sent them, page 37. Who? Voldemort. Hang on. I've heard that name. That's the one who murdered my parents. Yeah, that giant bloke. He said he's gone. Gone. Harry, he's back. It felt very strange to be standing here in Aunt Petunia's surgically clean kitchen, beside the top-of-the-range fridge and the widescreen television, and talking calmly of Lord Voldemort to Uncle Vernon. Why emphasize? 1, the kitchen is surgically clean, they have the most expensive fridge there is, and they have a widescreen TV in the house. All 3 of those are emphasizing the materialism of the Dursleys. They put their faith, hope, and trust in what? Yeah. Stuff. Stuff. Expensive stuff. The kitchen is surgically clean because there aren't any microbes. There aren't any organisms in there. As if she can make sure no harm will come to the family. Okay? The arrival of the Dementors and Little Winging seemed to have caused a breach in the great invisible wall that divided the relentlessly non-magical world of Privet Drive and the world beyond. So, Privet Drive, which really means what? Privet Drive stands for what? Our world, or Muggle world. Okay? This is called what? The world beyond. This is what? This is the wizarding world. But usually in our terminology, if we talk about the quote-unquote the world beyond, what are we talking about? Like the great beyond? Something after death. Okay? So notice what Harry's thinking here. The arrival of the Dementors and Little Winging seemed to have caused a breach. Notice, they don't connect. But they seem to actually connect. They should be touching. That's just my bad drawing there. Harry's two lives had somehow become fused and everything had been turned upside down. Or maybe the better way to draw it is like this. Harry's two lives had seemed to become fused. It's Harry's thinking that's wrong. Harry doesn't live two lives. He lives a single life. He lives it how? Two places. Okay. What have we talked about when we talked about the Mirror of Erised? What might Harry be seeing in the Mirror of Erised? Okay. What might have come out of Voldemort's wand at the end of Book 4? Is this, let's say the blue, the world of matter, material, and the black, the world of spirit, or spiritual? I don't mean literally, but I mean, is she possibly suggesting that this bears a relation to the spiritual world? Because in the next book, guess what? She's going to do exactly that. Because the next book's going to open with what happening? All hell is breaking loose in London. You have this strange fog. You have bridges collapsing that shouldn't be collapsing. You have hurricanes in the West Country. And what do we come to discover? The bridge didn't just collapse. That was caused by Death Eaters. It wasn't hurricanes in the West Country. It was giants. And you've got these mysterious deaths where people are killed inside locked houses. And no signs of death, other than that they're not living. Okay? And we have the Prime Minister talk with the other minister, or the other minister, Minister of Magic, talk with the other minister. Not quite sure which is the other minister there. Okay? And the Minister of Magic, Fudge, going out of his job, because he can as a result of the end of this book, has to explain to the Prime Minister what? The problems you're having? Caused by our world. And he's like, you mean? He goes, of course. Well, what's she suggesting there? Problems in the real world have what? Spiritual foundations? Go back to the first book. Okay? Harry's on the train with Ron, and he gets chocolate frog cards. And he gets the Dumbledore chocolate frog card. What does it mention about Dumbledore? Nicholas Flamel's partner in alchemy, discovered the 12 uses of dragon blood or something, and he defeated Grindelwald when? 1945. Well, what else happened in 1945? The end of World War II. The Nazis were defeated. Okay? So there's this parallel going on. Well, Harry thought that this world was completely, totally separate from this world. And what's happening? That division that he created in his mind, gone. The Dursleys were asking, notice, and everything had been turned upside down. It's like he's walked into Stranger Things, you know. The Dursleys were asking for detail, and if you haven't seen the second season, binge watch it, man, because it is so damn good. The Dursleys were asking for details about the magical world, and Mrs. Figg knew Albus Dumbledore. I mean, just either one of those blows his mind. He needs duct tape to keep it all together. Dementors were soaring around Little Weenie, and he might never go back to Hogwarts. Aunt Petunia. Notice, all this happens, and then she says, Beck. She doesn't say, Beck? Yes. Damn wizards are getting what they have coming. Harry thinks. She's looking at Harry as she had never looked at him before. And all of a sudden, for the first time in his life, he's 15. Harry fully appreciated that Aunt Petunia was his mother's sister. Notice the emphasis is on her. It's not on Vernon. Why?
Because she's showing the type of emotion person that he hasn't seen before.
Okay, possibly.
And he's not accepting it as well.
Okay, possibly. Louder. She's his blood. Vernon's not his blood. Vernon doesn't have a drop of blood related to Harry. Petunia? Oh, yeah. Dudley? Yes, but not Vernon. Okay? That's why, for the first time, he looks at her and he thinks, Mom's sister. He could not have said why this hit him so powerfully at this moment. All he knew was he was not the only person in the room who had an inkling of what Lord Voldemort being back might mean. Why? Well, Lily went off to Hogwarts, right? What does she do during the holidays? We assume she comes home. What does she then do while she's at home? Talks about what happens. Talks about her sister. Talks about the events at Hogwarts and what is happening in the magical world. How do we know that? Because Petunia already said in the first book, she came home from school, turning teacups into saucers, doing all this stuff, which, notice, by the way, violates all the magical, laws. So why was Lily kicked out of school and all this? Right? What else? When did Voldemort first rise to power? Was it back in the 40s and 50s? No. His rise to power corresponds with Lily and James's first year at Hogwarts. Okay? Meaning, he's already powerful. I mean, he already has his Death Eaters. But he starts kind of making moves, so to speak, in the open. So that when she is 11 years old and goes off to Hogwarts, he is starting to amass power. Okay? What happens within, I think it is 10 years. Voldemort's rise to power took 11 years. Okay? Lily goes off on her 11th birthday. She dies 11 years later. When Voldemort's at the peak of his power. Okay? See, James and Lily are going through school. They're becoming more powerful. Not like they're super, Marvel agents of the wizarding world or something. Okay? But they're becoming more powerful. They're becoming kind of united with Dumbledore, etc. Notice, they're part of the First Order of the Phoenix when they're how old? Early 20s, late teens. Okay? Because they both die when they're 21. Harry's born when they're 20. Okay? The Furious Pretense. Let me back up. Aunt Petunia had never in her life looked at him like that before. Her large pale eyes, so unlike her sister's, were not narrowed in dislike or anger. They were wide and fearful. She's remembering stories of what it was like before when Voldemort rose to power. People disappearing, including her sister. The Furious Pretense that Aunt Petunia had maintained all Harry's life, that there was no magic and no world other than the one she inhabited with Vernon, seemed to have fallen away. Notice, our narrator, in Harry's mind, tell us that's a pretense. She knows the whole truth. Well, books 6 and 7, we're going to come to see how well she knows that. Okay? Harry. Yes. He came back a month ago. I saw him. Her hands found Dudley's massive leather-clad shoulders and clutched them. Notice he's wearing a leather coat because he's tough. Uncle Vernon, hold on, hang on here. Now what does Vernon wisely do? I'm thinking wisely, position of husband/father, which in my old-fashioned mind means protector. He's thinking, the Voldy guy's out after you. He's sending these Demency-Watsons after you. You're here putting my wife, my son in danger. You're gone. You're out of here. No way. Okay? Out. Well, what stops Harry from leaving? A howler arrives. Notice, kind of just in the nick of time. With an awful voice that says, remember my last, Petunia. What's the my last? Do we find out in this book? Not really. Do we actually find out in 6 or 7? Kind of. You know what my last is? It goes back to book 1. Who sends the howler? Dumbledore sends it. What's my last? The letter he leaves with Harry on the doorstep. He's going to tell us what he essentially said in that letter. He's going to tell us that at the end of this book. As long as Harry can call this place home, what? He's safe. Here, he's safe. He's not safe if he leaves. Doesn't mean if he goes walking down around Magnolia Crescent, Voldemort can't find him. He can. But he can't touch him while he's in the home. Okay? So, Harry goes upstairs, goes to bed. The advance guard come to get him. I'm going to skip most of this. Notice who Harry kind of meets again. But the real one this time. Okay? He meets Alistair Moody. He also meets a few other people. Daedalus Diggle and Kingsley Shacklebolt and Tonks and such. And he goes off to the headquarters of the Phoenix. Headquarters of the Order of the Phoenix, excuse me. Which is what? Name it. Number 12. Say the place again. It's spelled Grimmauld place. So a lot of people say Grimmauld, but it's pronounced Grim Old Place. Grim Old Place. Doesn't that describe number 12? Sirius's house is not bright and shiny and airy. Okay? So he goes inside there, and who does he see? Ron and Hermione. Page 65. Now, let me back up a moment. 63. He goes up to them, sees them, And they're like, sorry, Harry, we really wanted to write to you and such. And we're told, right smack dab in the middle of 63, the warm glow that had flared inside him at the sight of his two best friends was extinguished as something icy flooded the pit of his stomach. What's the warm glow?
Happiness.
Happiness caused by love. His love for Ron and Hermione. He feels good just at seeing them. But that warm glow gets killed dead. By what? Dumbledore made us. Swear, Harry finishes the sentence. Not to tell me. It's the mention of Dumbledore's name that just kills that warm glow. Okay? Why? Because she's preparing us. She's preparing us for the next two books. The next book, Harry's going to spend a lot of time with Dumbledore. He's going to think he kind of knows Dumbledore. And then book 7, Dumbledore's gone. And what happens? He reads The Life and Times of Albus Dumbledore by Rita Skeeter. And he suddenly thinks, I never knew the man at all. He's like Harvey Weinstein. I never knew he was doing this to all these 200 women, It's like, Notice what's going on here. The mere mention of Dumbledore kills any good feeling. Normally, you mention Dumbledore, and Harry's like, whoa, okay, good. That's Dumbledore around. That's a good thing. Not here for some reason. Okay? So, he goes all ballistic on them on 65 and 66. Yelling top of his lungs and such. Okay? Says, you kept us in the dark, etc. He goes down for dinner. And Ron tells Harry about Percy. What's Percy doing? What's Percy being? Okay, he's abandoning his family. What's he being? Jerk. Why? What's he done? He sides with the ministry as opposed to his family. Okay? Hermione asks Harry, page 73, haven't you been getting the Daily Prophet? He says, yeah. Have you been reading it thoroughly? Well, not cover to cover. I mean, if they're going to report anything, it would be what? Headline news. You're like, Well, you need to read it cover to cover to pick it up, but they mention you a couple of times a week. But I'd have been not on the front page. You're kind of a standing joke, Harry. Well, where did the standing joke begin? Previous book. Because Rita Skeeter writes letters about Harry what? Or writes articles about Harry fainting, having these spells and seizures. Okay. What have they done, the Daily Prophet, to Dumbledore's reputation? He's a doddering old fool. What's happened as a result? He's been kicked out of the Wisengamot. He's lost his title of Supreme Mugwump, which is like Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Okay. So they start doing some cleaning and such. Next chapter, Order of the Phoenix. And they have dinner the next night, or maybe a couple nights later. Pages 86, 87. And Molly says, all right, time for bed, you youngins. You youngins meaning Ginny, Hermione, Harry, Ron, kind of Fred and George, even though they're 17 now, and thus adults. And Sirius says, not yet. And he looks at Harry. I thought first thing you do when you got here, start asking questions about Voldemort. I did. What are you doing? Why? I think that thing's possessed. He says, I asked Ron and Hermione. What do you think Sirius really wants to do at that point? I mean, I know I'm just reading into it, thinking because I'm a rotten bastard. Go up and either shake him by the shoulders or smack him across the face. Like, what do you want to ask them for? They don't know anything. Which Hermione would probably say, just stop right there. But Ron doesn't know anything. Okay? happens as a result of, I thought you'd want to know about Voldemort. What happens between Molly and Sirius? What kind of fight?
She feels like he shouldn't be telling.
Okay. She says, Harry doesn't need to know any of this. Have you forgotten our instructions? Dumbledore has said, don't tell Harry anything, but he didn't really say don't tell Harry anything. What else?
Essentially both trying to be parents.
Yeah. They're trying to outparent each other. Okay? Molly says to Sirius, you're not James. And then she says, and Harry's not James. And he says, and you're not Harry's mother. Well, I might as well be, she essentially says. What is each one trying to prove? No. Yeah, that they love Harry. They want to protect Harry. Sirius, however, wants what else? He wants Harry to become what he thinks Harry ought to become. James 2. Okay? So, who finally wins the argument? And why? Who intervenes? Lupin. Who else? It's not Lupin that helped Sirius win the argument. Nope. It's Arthur. It's her husband. Who says, Harry's got a right to know some things. She's like, Arthur, we're going to talk about this later, Okay? So, Harry starts asking questions. Do they tell Harry everything? No. Does Harry tell them everything that's been happening to him? Does he tell them about his dreams? The long corridor with the locked door? Nope. Okay. So, the noble and most ancient house of Black. We get a real introduction to the house. We meet Creature. We see them clean. We see Mundungus, stealing stuff and all. We see the tapestry in the one room. And if you ever get an opportunity to go to London and go to the Warner Brothers studio tour, the real one, not the mock one down in Orlando, okay? Because all the stuff there is quote-unquote fake. But the one outside London where they have all of the real props from the films. And as you know, I detest the films. But the props and the artwork are mind-blowing. The tapestry is about the size of that wall. And it's an actual woven tapestry. It's not something that somebody's just painted. It's all textile material. Each of the names, each of the birth dates, and they've got birth dates, death dates, anniversaries, all woven into people's names, where people like Sirius and Regulus and Tonks are burned out. It literally looks like somebody went up with a cigarette and kind of melted the fibers. Okay? And you can get up about this close to it and just, spend all kinds of time and keep other people from taking pictures, because that's what everybody does. So, Harry looks at that, and there's Sirius there, and Harry says, page 111, you're not there, Harry. Sirius, I used to be there, and he points at the blackened hole. My sweet old mother blasted me off after I ran away from home. You ran away? When? 16. Where'd you go? Your dad's. Your grandparents were really good about it. They sort of adopted me, this page 111. They sort of adopted me as a second son. Yeah, camped out at your dad's during school holidays. Then when I was 17, got a place of my own. My uncle Alphard left me a decent bit of gold. He's wiped off somewhere here too. Okay. I was always welcome at Mr. and Mrs. Potter's for Sunday lunch, though. So Sirius had kind of a home away from home, because this place wasn't home for him. And he says, I haven't looked at this thing in years. Who else does he see? He sees somebody Harry's going to start talking to. Phineas Nigellus. Okay? He sees dear old Aunt Elladora, the one who started the family tradition of beheading house elves when they got too old. She doesn't free them, she kills them and sticks their heads on the wall. kind of a sick, twisted, what? Okay. Other people, Harry, you're related to the Malfoys? Bottom of 113. Pureblood families are all interrelated. Molly and I are cousins by marriage. Arthur's something like my second cousin once removed. No point looking for them. Weasleys are not going to be on this. Why? What's the toujours pure mean? Always pure. Are the Weasleys purebloods? Yes. Where does that break down? What marriage do we see in the next book? Bill and Fleur, or Flim, as the others call her. What's Fleur? She's a Vila. Okay? That's not pure blood. All right? So, Harry goes off to the Ministry of Magic, next chapter, for his hearing. Mr. Weasley takes him. What does he see in the atrium? Because this is going to change. Statue. Big old statue right in the middle. It's a fountain. It's a wishing well kind of a thing. And in the middle of the fountain, or in the middle of the statue, there's a wizard standing there, nice robes, arm held up with his wand. Sorry, I should use this arm because I can raise it better. Wand pointing up, a witch just beside him, looking adoringly, lovingly up at him. And surrounding them, a house elf, a goblin, and a centaur. Dumbledore is going to say something about this statue at the end. Okay, the statue gets destroyed, by the way. Dumbledore is going to say about this statue, it's a lie, Harry. Because what is the statue meant to convey?
But they're all friends.
They're all friends, and the non-human magical beings,
Are lesser than wizards.
okay, but, yes, they are lesser. Well, no, it's not that they're just as important, but that they look up and adore the witch and wizard. How much do house elves adore witches and wizards, other than Dobby? And Winky. What does Winky think about the Crouches? They're wonderful. Is that because Winky is an evil house elf? No, it's because Winky doesn't know any better. Okay? I wish they'd get that thing out of there. So, he goes to the hearing. Where's the hearing held?
Courtroom.
The same courtroom he was in Dumbledore's Pensieve. What kind of hearing is this? It's a disciplinary hearing. And yet, when Arthur finds out where it is, he calls it old courtroom number 10. Well, they haven't used that sucker in ages. When was the last time apparently it was used? At Voldemort's downfall. So, Harry goes in there, 138, 139. We see the judges. And Fudge cries out. Disciplinary hearing of the 12th of August into offenses committed under the decree for the reasonable restriction of underage sorcery and the International Statute of Secrecy by Harry James Potter, resident number 4. Interrogators or interrogators. The English sounds a little bit nicer than the American. American interrogators. English interrogators. Okay? Cornelius Oswald Fudge, Minister of Magic. Isn't a disciplinary hearing a little bit beneath the Minister of Magic? Who else? Amelia Susan Bones, head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. This would be like the head of the FBI for a parking ticket. A little extreme. Dolores Jane Umbridge, Senior Undersecretary, Court Scribe, Percy Ignatius Weasley. And Dumbledore magically appears. Witness for the defense, and notice what he does. Yeah, y'all got lots of names. I got more. Albus, Percival, Wulfric, Brian, Dumbledore. Every one of those names, by the way, is a name of a British or Celtic saint. Every one of them, except for Dumbledore. Dumbledore is just the old English word for bumblebee, meaning moving and flitting all about. Okay? So, we know Harry gets off. How? How is he acquitted?
His fig.
Okay, Arabella Figg is brought in as a witness by Dumbledore, notice. What's the problem with Arabella Figg as a witness? She's a squib. So what's that in our world?
Unreliable.
She's an unreliable witness. She's like a pimp or a drug pusher. You know, somebody with a sketchy character or moral background. You don't really want that kind of person to be your sole witness. Okay? So that's one bit. So she provides some evidence. What evidence does she provide? That's useful.
It was really cold.
Cold, dark, the lights went out, and all the happiness was sucked out. In other words, 3 very strong symptoms of Dementor attack. Okay? So that's part of the evidence. What else? Dumbledore also uses something that Hermione uses in book 1 to get past the potions test. Logic. Because the potions test isn't about the potions. It's all about logic. What's the logic he uses? Okay? It posits if there were Dementors, okay, that's posited based on the testimony of Arabella Figg. 2, if Dementors are under control of Mom, the Ministry of Magic. And 3, if the Dementors attacked Harry Potter. Okay, this is premise 1, premise 2, premise 3. Then the only conclusion that can be drawn is that Harry was completely and totally justified to use magic. Why? Because even the restriction for underage blah, 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 if you are under magical attack, you can do that even if there is a muggle present. Who is another witness Dumbledore could bring in? Dudley. Okay? Because Dudley could describe what happened. What other kind of evidence could they bring forth? Somebody asked me about this the other day. Okay, Harry's wand. Do the Priori Incantatem, well, what would you see? You would see the last spell it produced come out of it. Okay, the Expecto Patronus. What other kind of evidence?
They use the pensive to get the out.
They could pull the thoughts out. Okay, Veritaserum, Truth Serum. But they don't use those for some reason. Louder? Okay, they weren't trying that hard. So, they keep going back and forth around this. Because Fudge isn't convinced that there were Dementors. Because Dumbledore says, well, if there were Dementors, Fudge says, all the Dementors are under the control of the Ministry of Magic. Okay, so then if they were under the control of the Ministry of Magic, then somebody of the Ministry of Magic had to order this attack. And they keep going round and round. I can bring Mrs. Figg back in again. No, we don't know. We need to get this done today. And Dumbledore's kind of like, well, I'm sure you're actually more concerned with the proper application of justice than time. Okay? So Harry is acquitted. Notice, they all. What little bit of information seems particularly impressive to Susan Amelia Bones? Harry says, I produce a Patronus. She's like, excuse me? A Patronus, yes. A corporeal. He's like, I don't know that word. Duh. She's like, you produced one with a body? Yes. How long have you been doing this? 3rd year. You've been producing a corporeal Patronus since you... Yes. Professor Lupin taught me how. Wow, that's impressive magic. Fudge. It doesn't matter how impressive the magic was. For Susan Amelia Bones, she's kind of sitting there going, yeah, it does, actually. But what about Umbridge and Percy? No, it doesn't matter. Because what matters to them? Whatever Fudge says. Okay? So, Harry's acquitted. What happens to Dumbledore? Poof. He disappears. Harry goes outside the room. There's Mr. Weasley waiting for him. He goes out to Mr. Weasley, page 154. I'm trying to move fast. And they meet up with Fudge and another man. Top of the page. A tall man with sleek blonde hair and a pointed, pale face. Well, well, well. Patronus Potter. Why does he call him that? Is it because Harry produced a Patronus? I mean, on the surface level, yes. What does he mean by it?
Saint Potter.
Yeah. What does the Patronus do again?
Protects.
It protects, it defends, it saves. Patronus Potter. Saint Potter. What is Harry going to be called in Book 7? I mean, we even have not Slughorn. Well, Slughorn does. I'm drawing a blank on the new Minister of Magic. Scrimgeour comes to Harry, Christmas time, and says, "Are you the chosen one?" What's the chosen one? What's another word for chosen one? In, I don't know, Hebrew. Messiah. Yeah, are you Jesus? For the wizarding world.
He is Jesus.
Okay? Are you the chosen one? Are you what? The Savior. Okay? And it turns out he is. He's not Jesus, though. Okay? He's a type. He's a representative. He is a deliverer type. Okay? So, Harry kind of smarts off to Mr. Malfoy. What are you doing here? He's like, I don't have to tell you what I'm doing here. What does Cornelius Fudge say? As he always says whenever he runs into people and they're talking about the Malfoys. He's made a generous donation. Okay, why does he keep making donations to St. Mungo's? Well, that, and he's probably responsible for many of the people that are in St. Mungo's, being the slimy git that he is. So, they go back to the headquarters, and they have a nice big party. What does Harry discover when he gets back there? They've gotten their school letters from Hogwarts. Ron and Hermione are prefects. Okay, Hermione you can understand, Brainiac. Ron? That doesn't sit well with Harry. He sits there in his room, pages 167 and following, and he's thinking, why Ron? In fact, go back to 166. Did he really believe he was better than Ron? No, this voice inside him says. Was that true? I'm better at Quidditch, but I'm not better at anything else. Well, that's true, Harry thinks. And he starts thinking about all the things he's done. Well, Ron and Hermione were with me most of the time. Not all the time. They didn't fight Quirrell with me. They didn't take on Riddle and the Basilisk. They didn't get rid of all those Dementors. They weren't in that graveyard with me. I've done more than they have. I've done more than either of them. But maybe, the small voice says, maybe Dumbledore doesn't choose prefects because they've got themselves into a load of dangerous situations. Maybe he chooses them for other reasons. Ron must have something you don't. No one in their right mind would make Ron a prefect. What do we discover at the end of the book is the reason why Dumbledore doesn't choose Harry? He's got enough on his plate. That's it. You had a full plate already, Harry. I didn't want to add more to it. Okay? So, they go downstairs, have a big dinner, and Mrs. Weasley points out to to Mad-Eye. She says, can you look upstairs? Can you see in that drawing room, in the desk drawer, is there a boggart in there? And he looks up because his magical eye can see through stuff. He says, yep. He goes, you want me to take care of it? He goes, no, I'll take care of it later. And then they have this big meal. And Dung, on page 173, comes up next to Harry after the meal, and he pulls out a photograph. What's the purpose of the photograph? It's kind of to make Harry feel good. Don't ask me how, just how Moody's mind works. He says, page 173, Original Order of the Phoenix. Found it last night. When I was looking for my spare invisibility cloak. Okay, these things are supposed to be really rare, and he has more than one. Harry takes the photograph. He sees all these people. Moody says, there's me. So, Alistair Moody, page 173. And there's Albus Dumbledore, and there's Daedalus Diggle on the other side. That's Marlene McKinnon. She was killed, he says, 2 weeks after this was taken. That's Frank and Alice Longbottom. Okay. Putting them over here because they're not dead, but they might as well be, you know. They got them. Harry's stomach already uncomfortable, clenches. Moody, better dead than what happened to them. That's Emmeline Vance. You've met her. There's Lupin. Benji Fenwick. He copped it too. So far, not too bad. A lot more live than die. Only ever found bits of him. There's Edgar Bones, brother of Amelia. They got him and his family too. Sturgis Podmore and Caradoc Dearborn. Sturgis Podmore, but Caradoc Dearborn vanished 6 months later. Never found his body. There's Hagrid. Elphias Doge, who we're going to see a lot of in the book 7. You've met him. Oh, there's two brothers. Gideon Pruitt and Fabian Pruitt. Anybody know who they're related to? Molly. They're Molly Weasley's brothers. Okay. Fought like heroes. There's Dumbledore's brother, Aberforth Dumbledore. Dorcas Meadows, Voldemort killed her personally. Sirius. Who else is over here that we haven't put down? James Potter, Lily Potter, and Wormtail, Peter Pettigrew. Okay, so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 over here. Plus them. Okay, they're incapacitated, so I think it's pretty safe to say 10 over here. It should be. I missed somebody. Because there's actually 22.
Well, Frank and Alice Longbottom was 2 people.
Yeah, sorry, 22. Okay? So, there's 11 there. What has Moody just shown us?
There's pretty much 50-50.
Being a member of the Order of the Phoenix means you are likely to die. Or at least it meant that if you were in the original Order of the Phoenix. Or to become incapacitated. Okay? So he shows that to Harry, and Harry's like, yeah, gee, thanks. I need to go peck. He heads upstairs and he sees Mrs. Weasley. Okay? And he sees on the floor Ron, dead, spread eagled. Ridiculous. Because Harry's thinking, wait, Ron can't be dead. Ron's downstairs. I just left him there. And he hears Mrs. Weasley. Ridiculous. Ron's body changes. Now it's Bill. Notice, spread eagle. What's the spread eagle mean? Avada Kedavra. Ridiculous. Mr. Weasley's body. No. Ridiculous. Dead twins. Dead Percy. Dead Harry. Get out of here. Let someone else. Lupin comes in, takes care of it. All right? He says, page 176, Molly, it's just a boggart. Just a stupid boggart. I see them dead all the time. See, it's not the boggart. That's the problem. The problem is where? It's this. Molly knows, even though she wasn't a member of the original Order of the Phoenix, Molly knows what is on the line here. I see, notice, them dead all the time. All the members of her family. She realizes, we're in danger. All the time. I dream about it. Sirius comes in. Moody's looking at Harry. He had a funny feeling Moody's magical eye had followed him all the way out of the kitchen. So now you have Moody, Sirius, Lupin, Harry, Molly Weasley. She says, don't tell Arthur. I don't want him to know. Harry, I'm so sorry. What must you think of me? Not even able to get rid of a boggart. Harry, don't be stupid. How different is this than when Neville got rid of the boggart in the classroom? It's really different, right? That was a controlled situation. That was a scientific experiment. This, it's not a scientific experiment. What's the boggart doing? It's playing on her darkest fears. And her darkest fears are where? Almost out in the open. I mean, she is racked with fear. I'm just so worried. Half the family's in the Order. Who's half the family? Molly, Arthur, Bill, Charlie, Fred and George, not yet. Because the other half is Fred, George, Ron, Ginny. Who's left out? Because Percy's acting like he's not in the family anymore. And Percy's not talking to us. What if something dreadful happens we never made up? And what's going to happen if Arthur and I get killed? Who's going to look after Ron and Ginny? Lupin. It's not like last time. The Order are better prepared. We've got a head start. We know what Voldemort's up to. How? Yes, they didn't have the spy last time. I mean, yes, Snape did turn spy. But when did he turn spy? It was just before Voldemort died. As we're going, or not died, but was defeated. As we're going to see in the next few books. Okay? We know what Voldemort's up to. Come on, it's about time you got used to hearing it. And then notice what he says. Or let me rephrase that. Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, oh, Molly, it's going to be okay. We'll all pull through this. Why not? Because it's not true. Okay? You know, in all my classes, I use the thing, you know, none of us know what's going to happen when we leave this classroom. People were walking in southern Manhattan this afternoon, riding bicycles on a bicycle lane, and some crazy guy, I'm going to say crazy, he wasn't crazy, he was just motivated, in a rented pickup truck. I don't know if you heard about this, happened just before class, mowed him down. 8 people dead, 15 people injured. Okay? Shouting, you can say what you want. Shouting a 2-word phrase, okay, as he came out of his truck. He was apparently stopped from killing more by a bus driver who cut him off. In other words, put his bus in the progress of the truck. So the truck rammed in, guy runs out, and then he gets shot by a cop. Molly, Lupin says, I can't promise no one's going to get hurt. Nobody can promise that. But we're better off than we were last time. You weren't in the order then. You don't understand. Why wasn't Molly in the order? She's about the same age as Lupin. Because Bill and Charlie are what?
Was she pregnant?
No. We're never told. But Arthur wasn't in the order either. Is it because they're not, quote unquote, advanced enough wizards and witches? We don't know. But they weren't in the order. He says, last time we were outnumbered 20 to 1. Are they not outnumbered this time? How many members are in the order now? I mean, we could go through and write down all their names. Because some of these same people are. Hagrid is now. McGonagall is now. Notice McGonagall's not listed here.
Peter Pettigrew's not.
Okay, Peter Pettigrew's down here, but he's not in it now. He wasn't really in it then. Okay. The odds aren't good now either. Okay.
They do have Harry, though.
Yeah, they have Harry, though. But do they say, it's okay, Molly, we've got Harry. And he's the chosen one. Jesus is going to come up. Seventh film, wreak holy hell on Voldemort. It's not what he does. Okay. So, we see them go on to school. We meet Luna Lovegood. Frankly, I wish she'd just gotten rid of Cho and had Harry, have the hots for Luna. Much better character than Cho. And we get the Sorting Hat's new song. Pages 204, 205. Notice how different this song is. Okay? In times of old, when I was new and Hogwarts barely started, the founders of our noble school, he says, thought never to be parted. Comes at the end of a line. United comes at the beginning of the next line. Notice how the two are kind of juxtaposed. Because they mean opposite things. Parting and uniting. United by a common goal, they had the self-same learning to make the world's best magic school and pass along their learning. Together, again, comes at the beginning of a line. We will build and teach, the four good friends decided. And never did they dream that they might someday be. For were there such friends anywhere? And when you first read this, I bet this was a surprise. As Slytherin and Gryffindor. Because in the books, it sounds like, even though everybody hates Slytherin, Gryffindor hates Slytherin more than the others. Okay? And vice versa. Unless it was a second pair of Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw. So how could it have gone so wrong? Notice what the hat is saying. Things aren't good here. How could such friendships fail? Why, I was there and so can tell the whole sad sorry tale. Said Slytherin. We'll do what? We'll teach just those. With what? Pure ancestry, pure bloods. What does he mean by just? He means the exact same thing when Frodo says he's just an enemy and deserves death. There's nothing else. Okay, so we'll teach only those of purest blood. Ravenclaw says what? We'll teach
The wisest.
nothing. Notice there's no adjective modifying those. We'll teach those with surest intelligence. Brainiacs. We're going to teach the smartest ones. Okay? Says Gryffindor, we'll teach all those with what? Brave deeds to their name. That is, they've actually done brave things. Okay? Hufflepuff. So, all, just, nothing before this one. Hufflepuff. I'll teach what? The lot. What does she mean by the lot? I'll teach them all. Notice Hufflepuff is the only one who doesn't divide the first years. Hufflepuff says, give them all to me. I'll teach them all. But she doesn't get to, does she? No. Because Slytherin says, I'm taking all the purebloods. You can have everybody else. Ravenclaw, I'm taking all the brains. You can have everybody else. Gryffindor, I want all those with brave deeds. You can have everybody else. So who does Hufflepuff get? What's left? Hufflepuff is left in the position of 6th grade PE, making teams for a sports thing, and you get what's left. You get those that nobody else wants on their team. And isn't that kind of how the people of Hufflepuff are described in the books? Hufflepuff is what house?
The hard
Loser house. What's the best house to be in? Gryffindor. And then Ravenclaw. And then I guess, okay, loser house, because at least loser house isn't evil incarnate, house. Okay? So, Hufflepuff. She doesn't only say, I'll teach the lot. I'll teach the lot and treat them just the same. See, that's a huge difference from the other founders. These differences caused little strife when first they came to light. For each of the 4 founders had a house in which they might take only those they wanted. So, for instance, Slytherin took only pureblood wizards of great cunning, just like him. Only those of sharpest mind were taught by Ravenclaw, while the bravest and the boldest went to daring Gryffindor. Notice, good Hufflepuff. She's the only one who gets that epithet, good. Because you can be brave and daring and wise, and be rotten. But you can't be good and bad at the same time. Hufflepuff is the only one she calls good. So whose house does Rowling actually think we should want to be in? It's Hufflepuff. Where they are loyal, just, true, and hard workers. See, Slytherins will always, if they can find a shortcut, they'll take the shortcut. Hufflepuff, nope, they're industrious. They're diligent. Okay? They don't take the easy way out. How do we know? You take it. I never would have gotten here if it weren't for you. See, Dudley, Cedric could have taken the cup easily. He was closest to it. What else could he have done? Oxio cup. Even if Harry tried to get to it before him. You take it. Okay? That's part of all those qualities. So, good Hufflepuff, she took the rest and taught them all she knew. The implication is Gryffindor will take those with bravery and courage and daring and make them what? Braver, more courageous, more daring. Ravenclaw will make you ace those ACTs and GREs and all those tests you'll have to take in life. Slytherin will enable you to rise over everybody else, to climb the corporate ladder, possibly by putting knives in the backs of the people you're climbing up above. Hufflepuff, She'll teach you everything she knows. And everything she knows is good. Okay? Thus, the houses and their founders retained friendships, firm and true. So Hogwarts worked in harmony for several happy years. How long has Hogwarts been around? Over 1,000 years. How many is several? Okay, one is one, a couple is two,
3 or 4.
a few is 3 or 4. Many is more than that. Several is like many. So is it 10? Is it 20? Is it, in terms of 1,000 years, is it 100? No. It's probably somewhere, I would say, between 5 and 10. In other words, how long did they work along together in perfect mystical harmony? The age of Aquarius and all that nonsense. Not long. Why? Because of this. But then discord. Get a different marker that writes better. But then discord crept among us. Okay? Feeding on our faults and fears. Okay, what word was used just 2 lines above? Harmony. Voices singing together. How? In agreement. Well, discord is what? Throw my voice into any choir and it, comes to a screeching halt. Okay? But discord has that meaning. It has another meaning. Because the chord here can be this kind of chord, a musical chord, but it can also be related to this. C-O-E-U-R, French, coeur, or Latin, card, as in cardiac, cardio, heart. Heart crept in. What does dis mean? What's it mean to diss somebody? Okay? Put them down. Tear apart. But then discord crept among us, feeding on our faults and fears. What kind of faults? Are we talking about personal character faults? Like not being able to tell the truth all the time? Is it that kind of fault? Or is it like the kind of faults I'm well aware of being from California? The kind of faults that shake the ground. The kind of faults that are cracks. The houses that, like Pillars 4, had once held up our school, now turned upon each other and divided sought to rule. So, let's use that heart image. So you have your heart. But they divide, because the heart is made up of what? 4 chambers. 2 atriums, 2 ventricles, right? Okay. So, Hufflepuff, Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Slytherin. And what is each house, we're told, trying to do? Trying to take over, wants to be the whole thing. Only problem is, a heart has 4 chambers. What happens if one of them tries to do it all? It dies. It goes into cardiac arrest. Similarly, what happens if one of them stops working? It goes into cardiac arrest. Okay? And for a while it seemed the school must meet an early end, what with dueling and with fighting and the clash of friend on friend. At last there came a morning when old Slytherin departed. And though the fighting then died out, he left us quite downhearted. It's not a complete heart anymore, is it? It had 4 pillars. Think of that school as being like this. And one of the pillars leaves. What's just happened to the foundation of that building? Ooh, it's become shaky. Does it mean there were no more Slytherins there? No, there's obviously Slytherins because we have Malfoy. Crabbe and Goyle, Pansy Parkinson, all those slimy kids. So, he left us quite downhearted. And never since the Founders 4 were whittled down to 3 have the houses been united as they once were meant to be. And now the Sorting Hat is here. And you all know the score. Score, does that mean like musical score? You know how to read the music? You know what's going to happen? Or is it score, Gryffindor 10, Slytherin 3, Hufflepuff, that kind of score? I sort you into houses because that is what I'm for. That's the score they know. You know what's going to happen here. I have to sort you. Who's the you the Sorting Hat is talking to? It's not talking to Harry, Ron, Hermione. First years, who are currently what?
Well, they're all under Hogwarts as one.
They're just first years. They're not members of individual houses. They're just first years. They're just incoming class of Hogwarts. I sort you into houses because that is what I'm for. Why? Because we were told, old Gryffindor whipped me off. They put some of their brains in, and this is what I do. Now listen closely to my song. Though condemned, what does condemned mean? Literally, damned with. To be damned alongside. I am damned to do what? To split you. Who's the you there? Is it you plural, y'all, or is it you singular? Yes, it's both. I am damned to split you. You, first years. Split? How? I've got to divide you. Some of you will be Slytherins. Some of you will be Ravenclaws. Some of you will be Gryffindors. And I think, it's never explicitly stated, but I think it's equally divided. First year's dormitory has how many beds? 5. Harry, Ron, Neville, Seamus, Dean. And I think the implication is it's the same way for every house. So there's going to be 20 students first year. Okay? They then go on to become second years. 20 students second year. All across the school. Okay? So it has to split. Those 20, some go into this, some go into this, some go into that. Well, how else is it splitting? Individuals. It looks at Erica and says, are you a Gryffindor? Are you a Ravenclaw? Are you a Hufflepuff? Or are you a Slytherin? What does it do? Does it take the best trait? Or does it look inside her mind or soul and say, you know, out of 100%, it looks like you've got 26%. Daring, brave deeds, Gryffindor. Because that's the majority. What's it just done? It's not looked at an individual as a single, complete entity that is whole. It has split them. Where in later books do we hear about splitting? Horcruxes. Horcruxing isn't good, right? Because what do you do when you kill somebody? You split your own soul. Is that any different than what the Sorting Hat is doing? It is splitting them and saying, should Hermione be here? No. We find out later what happened when she put that Sorting Hat on. It wanted to put her in Ravenclaw. She chose Gryffindor. It is our choices, Harry, far more than our abilities, that show what we truly are. Where did the Sorting Hat want to put Harry? Harry chose Gryffindor. Was it a good choice? Could he have done well in Slytherin? Yes. Notice, Hufflepuff is not even raised. Okay? Though condemned I am to split you, still I worry that it's wrong. Wrong. He doesn't say misguided. He says wrong. Why? Though I must fulfill my duty and must quarter every year. We don't usually think of quartering people unless we're talking about a form of execution in which you are drawn and quartered. Okay? Still, I wonder whether sorting may not bring the end I fear. What's the end he fears?
Total breakdown of the school.
Division. Division. Know the perils, read the signs, the warning history shows. Our Hogwarts is in danger from external deadly foes, and we must unite inside her, or will crumble from within. Notice she doesn't then tackle on, why? Because a house divided can never stand. But it's the implication. So, read the history, the signs, the warning history shows. Do you think J.K. Rowling puts those words in the mouth of the Sorting Hat because she wants her readers to think solely of the history of Hogwarts? Well, how many of us have read Hogwarts: A History? None. Why? She hasn't written it yet. She will. She definitely will at some point. Okay? But who has? Hermione, Fred, George, Harry, Ron? No. Ginny? Probably not. Cho? Probably, because that's the kind of person she is. Cedric? Maybe. I think she's talking about real history. Read the warnings. History shows. Well, where do we see warnings in real history of a house divided against itself cannot stand? Civil War. Our Civil War. You've got the English Civil Wars of the 17th century. You got the Wars of the Roses, which are another kind of Civil War of the 15th century. What's the point? If we want to succeed and live, what must we do? We, Hogwarts students, we've got to unite. Harry understands what the hat says, or what the hat is saying, because he says, page 209, it wants all the houses to be friends. And he looks at Draco, holding court at the Slytherin table. Fat chance. In other words, I will never be friends with that. What's Harry doing? Lying in the sand. And yet, into book 7, Draco Malfoy tips his hat to Harry. Why? Oh, I don't know. Could have something to do with the fact that Harry saved his bacon. Literally saves him from the fire at the end of book 7. Okay? And notice, Nick explains, the Sorting Hat feels bound, duty bound to proclaim warnings. Well, how long's nearly headless Nick been around? He's been dead for 500 years. And he's been at Hogwarts that whole time. So he's probably heard quite a few Sorting Hat songs. Okay? So after the Sorting Hat speaks, gives its song, Dumbledore stands up to give first year announcements and all that, beginning of the year announcements, and we hear Umbridge has to get in her 2 cents. Okay? Notice, she sits down. Harry and Ron don't have a flying fig what she was talking about. They completely missed it. Hermione, however, paid attention. She says it was illuminating. It explained a lot. Harry, did it? Sounded like a load of waffle, page 214. Some important stuff hidden in the waffle. Ron, really? Yeah. Progress for progress' sake must be discouraged. Pruning wherever we find practices that what does all that mean? It means the Ministry of Magic is interfering at Hogwarts. See, Harry and Ron don't have a clue. So what should Hermione's telling Harry that mean? Be careful of her. Okay? Very next chapter, Professor Umbridge. She's the new Defense Against the Dark Arts. They go off to Defense Against the Dark Arts. She puts on the board Defense Against the Dark Arts, a return to basic principles. And what does she say about their previous teachers?
They've been dangerous.
Yeah, they've been dangerous or completely flopped, inept. And Dean Thomas, I think it's Dean Thomas, Yeah, Dean Thomas says, bottom of 243, you know, the guy last year, okay, he was crazy, but, you know, we learned a lot. After all, Harry learned to do what? Throw off an Imperious Curse, which saved him in his little duel with Voldemort. Okay? So what else does she do? She does what every Department of Education says every professor ought to do across America. We have what MTSU says every professor is supposed to include on their syllabi. You'll notice I intentionally do not. I just like to stick my thumb in people's noses that way. Course aims. Here are the course objectives. Understanding the principles underlying defensive magic. That's what? It's theory. It's theory. Learning to recognize situations in which defensive magic can legally be used. Theory. Placing the use of defensive magic in a context for practical use. Theory. It's like taking a driver's ed course and reading a manual how to drive a car and never sitting in an automobile or even a simulator. And having to learn, if the simulator is standard transmission, how to shift. Imagine, if you've driven standard transmission, getting in a car with a clutch, first time being your driver's test. And you've got to pull into reverse. And you've got to get the car to move. How likely is it you're going to pass that test? You're not. At all. You have to do that more than once, more than twice, more than a dozen times before you're going to pass that test. Because you're going to go, and you're going to keep stalling out. Okay? So, she wants them to read. Hermione raises her hand. Other students start mouthing off, not literally mouthing off, but they start suggesting things. Your hand's not raised. Who gets in trouble and why? Why does Harry get detention? Okay, what did he say?
He calls her a liar. Yeah.
Why does he call her a liar? What does she say?
Cedric died in an accident.
Cedric died because of a tragic accident. And he who must not be named is not back. That's what really pisses Harry off. Yes, he is. I saw him. I fought him. And he tells her to shut up. So she writes the little note. He gets sent off to McGonagall. And McGonagall says on page 249, when Harry says, but I was telling the truth. Truth's important, right? Isn't that what school is supposed to be all about? Learning the truth? No, what does she say school is all about? Page 243. It's the view of the ministry that a theoretical knowledge will be more than sufficient to get you through your examination, which, after all, is what school is all about. School is all about what? Tests. It's about end-of-year achievement tests. Okay? All of you went to high school. Well, some of you might have been homeschooled, in which case you were preserved this right of hellish passage in schools today, because I didn't have achievement. We didn't have end-of-year achievement tests. We had final exams, which meant something. You didn't pass the final exam. You didn't pass the class. You had to retake it. Okay? But we didn't have the standard annual end-of-year state tests. What's the purpose of those? Does it really tell whether or not you've learned that material? You're all shaking your heads. No. The purpose of it is to secure additional funding for the school. You do well, the schools get more money. Every one of you, when you graduate here, the semester that you graduate, you have to take your senior exit exam. But guess what? You don't have to pass it. You can do what I know some students, like I'm pretty sure my son said he did this, intentionally put down the wrong answer on every question there was. Because he was just so pissed off he had to do it. You know what happens as a result of that? That goes back to the department. That is, that reflects on the department. And if enough students do that, then the department can lose funding for the next year. Okay? If it happens across the board at the university, The university will lose funding from the state appropriations bodies. So this is why the examination is what education is all about. It's not about learning actual ideas or discussing actual ideas. So what does McGonagall tell him? Keep your head down. Why? Because when it's up, it makes a nice target. Okay? And keep your temper under control. Here it is again. I had self-control up here. How well does Harry practice self-control? Not so well. So he goes off with detention with Dolores. And what does he do? He writes lines. I don't know if you guys had to write lines when you were in grade school. I sure did, because I would never shut up. Or was accused of not shutting up. Class clown and all that nonsense. But I was smart, because when I was in grade school, we had blackboards, and we had those little things that would enable you to stick multiple pieces of chalk in it so that you could draw a set of even lines across the board, so that when you would practice penmanship on the board, which we had to do, you had nice straight lines to follow. Well, I saw those things and I thought, I could stick that chalk in there and put, I must not talk in class. And instead of writing one line of that, I automatically wrote 5. And if I had to do 200, I only had to do that 40 times. Okay? And the teachers were stupid enough to leave. Go off, get a drink, make out, whatever they were doing. Harry's lines are a little bit different than that, however. When he writes, I must not tell lies with the special quill she gives him, shouldn't he learn something about not taking a quill used by somebody else? Okay? What happens? It burns on the back of his hand. So he has to go back 4 more days. By the end of the 4th day, she says, yes, I think that'll do. How well will it do? 2 years later, when Scrimgeour comes to visit the burrow and talk to Harry, Harry does this and says, I remember. He's kind of saying, where were you when the Ministry of Magic was doing this? What is this an example of? It's not major, but it is torture. Okay? This scar will what for Harry? It's going to be like this one. It'll be with him the rest of his life. Okay? He'll be able to show his little children, little James, little Lily, little Albus Severus. Look, here's what I got to do when I got in trouble. Don't get detention, you know. So, chapter 14, we get Percy and Padfoot. I'm trying to get us to at least 485 or so, and farther if I can. And in this chapter, we learn a couple things. Harry writes to Sirius, and Sirius says, I need to see you, I need to talk to you. So he shows up in the fireplace and they talk. What else? We hear about Sturgis Podmore, page 287, okay? Who is charged by the Wisengamot with trespass, attempted robbery at the Ministry of Magic, because he is trying to force his way into a top security door at 1 in the morning. So Sturgis Podmore is convicted to 6 months in Azkaban. Okay, that's interesting. Ron gets a letter from Percy. What kind of letter is this? Is this a loving letter from an older brother to a younger brother, telling him about the pitfalls of life and be careful of girls when you're 15 because they're crazy and you don't know what's going on? And no.
At first it seems that way.
At first it comes across that way, but then it becomes what? I understand you have a new defense against the dark arts teacher and that you've become prefect. Well done, I see you following in my footsteps, becoming prefect. Yeah, well, who else was prefect? Bill and Charlie. Okay? But then he talks about Dolores Jane Umbridge. And he says about her, she is a delightful person. And then he talks about Harry, Dumbledore, and what does he warn Ron of? Stay away from Harry Potter. Distance yourself from Albus Dumbledore. He says, 297, you do not want to be tarred with the same brush as Potter. It could be very damaging to your future prospects. And you're hear about life after school, too. As you must be aware, our father escorted Potter to court, had a disciplinary hearing this summer. In front of the whole Wisengamot, he did not come out of it looking too good. Really? I thought he came out looking pretty damn good. I mean, when you have the head of magical law enforcement saying, you could do a Patronus charm starting in your 3rd year? What did Lupin already tell us about that in the 3rd book? He said, Harry, this is really advanced magic. A lot of fully qualified wizards can't even do this. Okay? So, sever ties with Potter. Stay away from Dumbridge. What's Ron do with this wonderful letter from his dear, loving older brother? Rips it up and throws it away. Okay? So Harry asks Sirius if Sirius knows anything about Umbridge. Is she a Death Eater? 302. Sirius, I doubt it. I know her by reputation. I'm sure she's no Death Eater. She's foul enough to be one. Yeah, but the world isn't split into good people and Death Eaters. What does Sirius mean by that?
She could still be rotten.
Okay. Let's not use Death Eater. Let's use one of 2 terms that is bandied about in our society far, far too often. And it's bandied about usually by people who don't like somebody else, another class, another group of people, people that they intellectually, politically, ideologically disagree with. What do they often label those that they ideologically disagree with?
Nazis.
Bingo. Oh yeah? Well, you Nazis. What's the other word? Just as bad as Nazis. In fact, in one sense, it's even worse. No, communist isn't a bad word anymore. Because people walk around wearing their stupid little Che Guevara t-shirts. You know who Che Guevara was? He was a Bolivian mass murderer. Literally, mass murderer.
And a racist.
Well, there's the other word. Thank you.
Gays.
Racist. The easiest way to not have to deal with anybody or their ideas. You're a racist. Therefore, because they're a racist, we don't have to talk about your ideas at all. Doesn't matter what they are. You're a racist. Therefore, in my universe of thought, you don't exist. Okay? This works just as well. We don't have as many Nazis around anymore, though. But apparently, racists are everywhere. And again, doesn't matter what kind of racists. Whether you're talking about anti-black racists, that is, racists who don't like blacks, racists who don't like Latinos, racists who don't like Asians, racists who don't like whites, racists who don't like Eskimos, racists who don't like pick the race they don't like. Okay? And you think I'm being silly, but they're all different kinds. I mean, racists within a community. You know, racists within the black community of darker skinned blacks who have racist attitudes towards lighter skinned blacks. Or racists in the Latino community because it's the wrong kind of Latino. It's not Mexican Latino, it's Puerto Rican Latino or Guatemalan Latino or Honduran Latino. You can be the right and the wrong kind of Latino. Just like the right and the wrong kind of white, right? You can be the... I shouldn't use that example. I was going to say you can be the Teddy Kennedy kind of white, but Teddy Kennedy, the Kennedy family, or what? White trash, the trailer park kind. Okay? It's both of those are forms of racism. So, replace these with this. And what is Sirius saying? The world isn't divided between good, spectrum, and Death Eaters. It's good and evil. Let's talk about a few characters. Okay, here's the midpoint. Where's Harry on this spectrum? Is he over here? Is he good incarnate? Is he Jesus? No, he's not. Harry doesn't turn the other cheek very often. Okay, for example. So Harry's somewhere over here. Albus Dumbledore is somewhere over here. Arthur Weasley is somewhere over here. Where's Dolores Jane Umbridge? Yeah, she's on this side. Okay. Where's Voldemort? Yeah,
He's past evil.
he's evil. Nothing good about him. Okay. Where's Draco Malfoy? He's over here a little bit. What about Lucius? You got to go a little bit farther over. McNair, Crabbe, Goyle. Yeah, they're all on this side. Lupin, this side. Fudge. Yeah. Is he evil? No. Is he stupid? Yes. Is he misguided? Yes. Why? Dumbledore told us at the end of the fourth book. Love of office. What's he want? Power. That's all he wants. Okay? So, Lupin says, world's not split into good people and Death Eaters. I know she's a nasty piece of work. You should hear Remus talk about her. Why? Because she's the one who authored legislation that essentially made it impossible for werewolves to get jobs. She's the one, this book, will call centaurs what? Filthy half-breeds. Not a smart thing to do when you're surrounded by a herd of centaurs. Because what do they do at that point? They throw her up in the air and they ride off into the forest. And when she's eventually found, how does she look? Not a little disheveled, like something happened in that forest. Remember, those centaurs are what?
Half horse.
And half men. And they don't see a lot of women in the forest. We're not told specifically what happens to Dolores Jane Umbridge, but I don't think it takes a lot of imagination. So, she's appointed Hogwarts High Inquisitor. Why that name? Why High Inquisitor?
Spanish Inquisition references.
Remember the warnings history shows, the Sorting Hat says. Okay? So, Rowling intentionally brings in this idea of Inquisition. Well, we saw it also towards the beginning of the novel. When Harry was tried by his interrogators. Okay? So what's her job as High Inquisitor? What is she supposed to do? Keep an eye on Hogwarts. Okay? What's among the first things she does with the other teachers? Kind of. You'll see it every now and then in some of your classes. If you're in a department that has a lot of graduate students and graduate students teaching, okay, you'll see a professor come in once or twice or maybe more a semester and sit in on the class. They're doing what? They're observing that teacher. They're watching to see how effective that student is. Okay? She does the same thing. How long has she been teaching? 2-3 months. As of when this happens. Who does she evaluate? Hagrid. How long has Hagrid been teaching? A year. Year and a half. But he's not here yet. He's off somewhere. Who else does she evaluate? Professor Trelawney. How long has she been teaching? 14 years. Ever since her first prophecy. She evaluates Snape. How long has he been teaching? Same amount of time. She evaluates McGonagall. She asks, how long have you been teaching? 49 years. And notice McGonagall puts her in her place. She's not going to take any crap from this one. She's like, how are you supposed to observe me teach if you keep interrupting me? Slam, you know. And the students are going, yeah, go McGonagall, man. Okay. So Harry gets detention again. He goes to McGonagall, 319. So not only does he have detention, she takes points from Gryffindor. Harry's like, man, that's just not fair. So Ron and Hermione actually, comes up with an idea. She tells Harry, pages 326 and following, I think it's actually 325, where it starts. She says, we're not going to learn anything in Defense Against the Dark Arts. Why? What are they doing in class? They read. That's it. No asking questions, they just read. So she says, we need somebody to teach us Defense Against the Dark Arts. 326, Harry, who? Isn't it obvious? Talking about you, Harry. About me what? Straight over his head. Talking about you teaching us Defense Against the Dark Arts. He stares at her. Ron, here's an idea. Harry, what's an idea? Hello, Harry, anybody there? You teaching us to do it. But I'm not a teacher. You're best in the year. He says, no, I'm not, Hermione. No, she says, when we actually had an exam, when we both sat for the exam, because first year, what happened to Harry? He didn't sit for his exam. He was in the hospital wing. Okay. Second year, the exams were canceled. Third year, they actually had them. And Harry did better. Okay. Ron, you know what? I don't think we want somebody this stupid teaching us. So he says, well, so let's see, what have you done? First year, saved the stone from you-know-who. Harry, that was luck. Ron, second year, you killed the basilisk, destroyed Riddle. Yeah, Fox. Third year, fought off about 100 Dementors. Yeah, Fluke. Fourth year, fought off you-know-who again. And now Harry is getting angry. Sounds great when you say it like that, but all that stuff was luck. I didn't know what I was doing half the time. And yet, go back to page 167 when Harry finds out Ron's been made a prefect, and these are the exact same things he runs through in his mind and says, why him? He didn't do any of this stuff. I did it all. And notice, they're grinning while Harry's talking, and then they start laughing at him because they realize, he really is stupid. Right? So Hermione says, Harry, we're not laughing. We're not saying anything like that. Because Harry finishes it with 327. You don't know what it's like. Neither of you, you've never had to face him, have you? Duh. You think it's just memorizing a bunch of spells and throwing them at him? Like you're in class or something? The whole time you're sure you know there's nothing between you and dying except your own brain or guts or whatever? Like you can think straight when you know you're about a second from being murdered or tortured or watching your friends die? They've never taught us that in their classes, what it's like to deal with things like that. Well, Moody tried, right? And you two sit there acting like I'm a clever little boy to be standing here, alive, like Diggory was stupid, like he messed up. You just don't get it. That could just as easily have been me. It would have been if Voldemort hadn't needed me. And Hermione's like, you just made my point, Harry. That's what we need to be taught. Okay, so what's she saying? We need to be taught to be able to think fast on our feet like you. Harry can't teach them that. That's instinct. You either have it or you don't. Okay? But he can teach them some things. So she says, think about it. So he does think about it and he agrees. So Hermione makes arrangements for a couple people to meet with them in the Hogshead pub. Why Hogshead? Why not 3 broomsticks? Louder? She thinks it'll be inconspicuous. Which is the more popular of the 2 pubs? 3 broomsticks. A lot of people in there. In and out. All the time. Hogshead? Dive bar. It's the kind of pub I like to go to when I'm in London. Not the nice flashy one with neon and blaring TVs everywhere. I don't go to pubs that have TVs, period, or music playing. I like to be able to hear conversations in the room because they're wonderful. Especially if you go to pubs that have regulars. There's this one, it's my favorite place. People come in, and these guys, 70, 80 years old, they're talking about stuff in the 50s. And you can just sit there drinking. It's like old farts around here, who go to, the place on the square. Okay? So they go to Hogshead, which has nobody there. And how many does this couple become? 25 people show up, plus Harry, Ron, and Hermione. And Harry's like, a couple? This includes good friends of Harry's. Fred, George, Ginny, you'd expect them to show up. Luna, Neville, you'd expect them to show up. Dean Thomas shows up. Seamus shows up. Okay? But then you get other guys, like this Zachariah Smith, who won't shut up. And Fred and George finally warn him they're going to clean his ears. And they get this big, long metal skewer-like thing. Like, they're going to clean them from this side over to this side. Okay? What happens in this informational meeting?
They just start asking questions about students.
And Harry says, I'm not going to answer those questions. But is it true that you... I think Colin Creevy asked the question. And Harry's like, well, yeah. And is it true that you... And Neville mentions the phosphorus stone in the English edition. Here he calls it the sorceress stone. Okay. And Harry's like, well, yeah. And Cho's like, and you got through that maze thing. And Harry's like, well, yeah. Because, Cho said that, and so he's feeling pretty good about himself. Notice the names of these people, by the way. Bottom of 337, top of 338. Neville, Dean, Lavender, Parvati, and Padme. You would think, really, after the Yule Ball, they wouldn't have anything to do with Harry. Okay? Cho, one of her usually giggling girlfriends. The one who gets sneak on her face later on. Luna, Katie Bell, Alicia Spinnet, Angelina Johnson. Of course they're going to show up. Why? Quidditch team. Colin and Dennis Creevy, losers. Ernie McMillan, Justin Finch Fletchley. Why is it important he's there? Second book, he thinks Harry is the heir of Slytherin. And then he comes back and says, sorry, mate. Hannah Abbott. Book 7. Harry and Hermione are going to go off to Godric's Hollow. Why? To get in touch with Harry's long-dead family. To see what clues he can find. And they go into the cemetery, and what does he find? Abbott family. Okay? A Hufflepuff girl with a long plate down her back. Harry doesn't know her name. 3 Ravenclaw boys. Anthony Goldstein, Michael Corner, Terry Boot. Ginny, followed by a tall, skinny blonde kid. Fred, George, Lee Jordan. Okay. So he fesses up to doing all the things others said he has. So they agree they're going to do this. Then we get educational decree number 24. These are another thing. Go to the Harry Potter studio tour and go into the room before you go into the Hogwarts Castle room. And the Hogwarts Castle is about the mock-up, the model of it, twice the size of this room. The footprint of the castle. And from the very lowest level of the ground to the top of the tallest tower is probably 20 feet. This thing is huge. Okay? Students go into that room and they burst into tears. This thing is so amazing. Maybe I'll put some pictures on D12 or something. Anyways, before you go into there, you go into a room and you got a wall like this with all of the educational decrees. Printed out big banner-like paper with frames around them. Okay? So there's this one. What obviously has happened? Somebody snitched. Okay? So, skipping a bunch, trying to get up to 485 or so. They have their first real meeting. How does Harry find a room? He asks Dobby. And Dobby tells him about the room of requirement. Where did Harry first hear about the room of requirement? Dumbledore told him about it. So he tells Dobby he needs a room that'll accommodate 28 people. where they can practice defensive spells and such. They go inside. They find a big room. The room is lined with bookcases with all kinds of books about defensive spells. And there's also carpeting and big plush cushions. So you can put them on the ground so that when you hex somebody, they'll fall and land on the cushion nice and soft like. But Hermione says, we need a name for the group. Okay? So they start going over the names. Lost my place. Bottom of 391, 392. We start getting suggestions. Hermione says we need a leader. Cho. Harry's leader. Here's leader. So, names. Angelina. Anti-Umbridge League. That's pretty good. Fred. How about the Ministry of Magic or Morons group? You don't think Percy would really like that one very well? Hermione. No, it needs to be something. Didn't tell everyone what we were up to. So Anti-Umbridge League, it's not very good. Cho, the Defense Association. DA for short. Nobody knows what we're talking about. Jenny. Yeah, DA's good. Let's make it Dumbledore's Army. Why is it Jenny? Because it's Jenny. She's got a one-up Cho. Okay. Is there anything going on between Harry and Jenny here?
Not yet.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little one-sided. I mean, there is something. How do we know? First time Harry showed up at the Weasley's house, what did Ginny do? Every time she sees Harry, she turns beet red and runs. Okay? But here she's got a boyfriend in this book. So, Dumbledore's Army. And Harry teaches them what spell? First lesson. Expelliarmus. How do we know Harry's a good teacher?
You got Neville to do it?
He taught Neville to do it. Page 393. Neville, I did it! I've never done it before. I did it! Notice just before that. Expelliarmus, said Neville, and Harry, caught unawares, felt his wand fly out of his hand. How was Harry caught unawares? He had his back to him. Filthy, scummy thing to do, Mad Eye would say, you know. Harry, good one, deciding not to point out that in a real duel situation, Neville's opponent was unlikely to be staring in the opposite direction with his wand held loosely at his side. But, way to go, Neville. Okay. Why is this important? Okay. Yet, I mean, this is not quite midway, but it's almost midway. What happens between here and the end of the book? Neville blooms, man. Yeah. Just as perfect casting, by the way. If you look at Neville, 11 years old, and Neville at 18, hello, Neville became a stud, seemingly overnight. Harry stays a midget. Gets better looking, but he's still a little short guy, okay? Can't do anything about it. So, Lion and the Serpent. I'm going to skip. Hagrid's Tale. Hagrid comes back from where? Where? Yeah, somewhere north, we're not exactly told. It's not in Britain. The implication kind of like it's somewhere northeastern Europe, like
Norway?
Russia. No, it's more like it's Russia. Okay? Who's he with? Madame Maxime. What are they doing? What did Dumbledore tell Fudge to do? First thing, get the Dementors out of Azkaban. Second thing, send an envoy to the Giants. So he sent Giants to the Giants. Why didn't they succeed? Got there first. But he doesn't come home empty-handed, right? What's he come home with? His little brother, Grop, who's bigger than he is. Why is Grop bigger? He's full giant. Okay? Then we get the Eye of the Snake. Hagrid's back. He's teaching. He's teaching about thestrals. What are thestrals? Invisible horse-like creatures without flesh They have like leathery covering of their skeleton with wings. A bat, horse-like thing. Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. Who can see them? People who've seen death. So who can see them? Harry, Luna. Dumbledore obviously would be able to see them. Hagrid obviously sees them because he's teaching them. Does Neville see them?
Yes.
Who did he see? He saw his either granddad or uncle die. Yeah. Okay. How come Harry hasn't seen them before? Who did Harry see die? He saw Cedric die. Who else did he see die? He didn't see his father die. His father was downstairs, but he saw his mom die. So how come he didn't see them book one? Is it that he didn't remember? Okay, this is a question that was asked. And J.K. Rowling said in an interview, it's because the something like the significance of Cedric's death hadn't yet sunk into Harry's consciousness at the end of book 4. Because remember, he saw Cedric die, and then he goes off and leaves. How does he leave? He gets into the horseless carriages. He doesn't see them then. But here we're told if you see somebody die, you see thestrals. What, you have to sit and it has to sink in over time? Okay. Yeah.
The rationale is more that you have to experience it and kind of comprehend it as opposed to it just happened near you.
It seems to me like Harry pretty much experienced and comprehended it, especially after Dumbledore made him relive it. Okay. But I still even kind of wonder, especially after Harry has the experience with the Dementors and he hears his father, and he knows what happens, and he hears his mother, shouldn't he see them then at the end of book 3? I mean, he's aware now of how his parents died. Anyways, just a little side note. So, let's see here. Let's jump to the end of the Eye of the Snake. Not quite the end. They have another DA meeting, and everybody else leaves. It's Harry and Cho left. Page 456. Harry gets ready to leave. He's walking towards the door. Don't go. I'm really sorry to get all upset like this. I didn't mean to. She says, I know it must be horrible for you, me mentioning Cedric, you saw him die. I suppose you just want to forget about it. And he's, yeah. You're a really good teacher, Harry. And she notices mistletoe, and they're standing under it. And she moves in for the kill. About top of 457. After telling Harry, I really like you, he could not think. A tingling sensation was spreading throughout him, paralyzing his arms, legs, brain, like he's just, twitching. She was much too close. He could see every tear clinging to her eyelashes. She's coming up to make out with him, and she's still crying. Poor Harry. So that he goes back, he tells Ron and Hermione. Notice he just kind of has this strange look on his face, and Ron's like, what happened? Hermione, is it Cho? Did she corner you? Harry, what did she want? Did you kiss? So, she explains to Harry how Cho is feeling. Page 459. Obviously, she's feeling very sad because of Cedric dying. Then I expect she's feeling confused because she likes Cedric and now she likes Harry. And she can't work out who she likes best. Okay, guy talking here, pause for a moment. What the hell does she mean she can't figure out who she likes best? Harry is what?
Alive.
Flesh, blood, here now. Cedric, rotting corpse in the grave. If she wants to be a ghoul, she can go dig up Cedric and kiss him. But she can't. Sorry, back to the book. Because I'm like Ron. Emotional range of a teaspoon. Then she'll be feeling guilty, thinking it's an insult to Cedric's memory to be kissing Harry at all. An insult to his memory. Sorry. And she'll be worrying about what everyone else might say about her if she starts going out with Harry. What? Is she supposed to become a nun for the rest of her life? Because a boyfriend, not her only one, a boyfriend died? And she probably can't work out what her feelings toward Harry are anyway. And Harry's sitting there going, okay, great, thanks. What am I? Second choice. She wanted liverwurst. She gets chopped liver instead, Because he was the one who was with Cedric when Cedric died. So that's all very mixed up and painful. So Harry's probably thinking at this point, so does she really think when she was kissing me that in some way she was actually kissing Cedric? You? Oh, yeah, really. And she's afraid. She's going to be thrown off the Ravenclaw Quidditch team because she's been flying so badly. Ron, one person can't feel all that at once. They'd explode. Just because you've got the emotional range of a teaspoon doesn't mean we all have. Notice, Harry, I love his phrasing. She was the one who started it, like it was a fight. I mean, she just sort of came at me. Next thing, she's crying all over me. I didn't know what to do. Ron, don't blame me, mate. Hermione, you just had to be, you were nice to her, right? I patted her on the back like she needs to, like a baby needing to burp. You okay there, Joe? Hermione, okay, could have been worse. You going to see her again? Yes, he is, right? When's he going to see her again? Hogsmeade weekend? She's got a nice date planned at that horribly feminine place, with the doilies and the roses and all this kind of stuff. And what does Harry do? And says, well, you don't mind if we go see Hermione, do you? Not a way to make the date go all that well, to talk about another girl. Okay? Anyways, Harry has his vision that night. What's the vision? Mr. Weasley being attacked by a snake. So, McGonagall believes him, takes him to Dumbledore. And what does Dumbledore say? Page 468. How did you see this? Inside my head. No, you misunderstand me. I mean, where you were positioned, were you standing beside the victim, else looking down on the scene from above? Harry, I was the snake. And Dumbledore's like, okay, I was right. And what does he do? Dumbledore looks at Ron and asks Harry, is Arthur seriously injured? Yes! Notice, what's happening while they're having this little conversation? Psst, psst. Arthur's sitting there next to the door, bleeding. And what does Dumbledore do? He starts talking to the pictures on the wall. And they're like, oh my God, he's finally lost it, And the pictures start talking back. Okay? So he speaks to a former healer at Mungo's, St. Mungo's. He speaks to two of them, actually. He speaks to Phineas Nigellus. And what does he do? He sends them off where? No, sorry. Them, Harry, Ron, and other Weasleys, and Hermione. Sends them back to the headquarters, okay? And they hear, word arrives the next morning from Mrs. Weasley. Trying to find it. Get past it. Your father's alive. Page 478. Dad is still alive. I'm setting out for St. Mungo's now. Stay where you are. I will send news as soon as I can. Mom. Notice, Dad is still alive. What's the problem with the statement?
He's dying.
The word still implies, but he may not always be. Okay? Dad is alive means he's out of danger. Dad is still alive means there's still danger. Okay? So, they go off to St. Mungo's. And you get this description when they get there. You go to any hospital, what do you see? You see the names of previous doctors, founders, all that kind of stuff. And you also see kind of a legend telling you where to go for what kind of treatments. Page 485 at the bottom. Artifact accidents. Ground floor, such as cauldron explosion, wand backfiring, broom crashes. Notice it's not Muggle artifact, because if they had that, Arthur Weasley would probably have been there a few times. Creature-induced injuries. Bites, stings, burns, embedded spines. Magical bugs. Contagious maladies, dragonpox, etc. Potion and plant poisoning. Third floor, spell damage. Unliftable jinxes, hexes, incorrectly applied charms, visitors' tea room, and hospital shop. Notice what ward's not mentioned. Christmas on the closed ward. It's the title of one of the chapters. That ward is not mentioned on there. Okay? So they go into Mr. Weasley. They see him. They talk with him. What do Fred and George loan Harry? It's not the first time he's used them, by the way. Extendable ears. He hears members of the Order of the Phoenix go into Arthur's room, and we hear Mrs. Weasley and Arthur and Moody. And Moody says, "Oh, well, there's something funny about the Potter kid. We all know that." Mrs. Weasley, "Dumbledore seemed worried about Harry when I spoke to him." "Of course he's worried. The boy's seeing things from inside you-know-who's snake. Obviously, Potter doesn't realize what that means. But if you know who's possessing him," Harry pops the ears out. The others have heard it also. And he starts to think, what? I'm being possessed. They go back to number 12, Grimmauld Place. And what does Harry do? Quarantines himself up in his room. So who does he have to talk to? Phineas Nigellus. Sirius's great-great-great-grandfather or something. And what kind of conversation does he have? Because what is Harry planning on doing? He starts packing his bags, man. He's going to check out. Okay? Phineas Nigellus says, Dumbledore, page 495, tells you stay where you are. What else did he say? Nothing. How forthcoming is Phineas Nigellus with information? How friendly is he as a conversation person? Conversator? Conversationalist, thank you. Not.
He's pretty rude.
He's pretty rude. What house was he in? Head of Slytherin. Okay? Yeah, he fits. So, but what does he say to Harry? Look at the bottom of 495. Harry, so that's it, huh? He just tells me, stay there. That's all he could tell me after I got attacked by those Dementors. Stay put while the grown-ups take care of it. Phineas Nigellus, you know, precisely why I loathed being a teacher. Young people are so infernally convinced that they are absolutely right about everything. Has it not occurred to you, my poor puffed-up popinjay, there might be an excellent reason why the headmaster of Hogwarts is not confiding every tiny detail of his plans to you? What does he mean? Who the hell do you think you are? You are a 15-year-old kid. Dumbledore's been around the block a few times. He defeated Grindelwald. Do you think he's going to tell you everything? Have you never paused while feeling hard done by to note that following Dumbledore's orders has never led you into harm? When has following Dumbledore's orders ever harmed you? No. Like all young people, you are quite sure that you alone feel and think. You alone recognize danger. You alone are the only one clever enough to realize what the Dark Lord may be planning. What's he saying? What is Rowling saying through him? Kids, 15-year-olds, and others reading it, don't think you have all the answers. Okay? It's a nice thing about age. I'm 55. When I was 25, and even more so when I was 15, I thought I knew everything. And as I gradually got older, I realized, I really don't know much. I really am pretty stupid. And the older I get, kind of the more stupider I realize I am. And probably by the time I die, I'll realize, man, I'm just an idiot. I never knew anything. Okay? Harry. So he is planning something. Oh, did I say that? Didn't mean to say that. So who convinces Harry he's not being possessed? There's only one person who can.
It's Jenny.
Why?
She's been possessed.
Book 2. So what does she say? Oh, gee, I don't know, Harry. Large blocks of time you don't have any recollections of? No. Memories that aren't yours? No. Then you haven't been possessed. Oh, that's good. So now he suddenly feels a lot better. Yeah, we've got time. Christmas on the closed ward. They run into Gilderoy Lockhart, who's really proud because he can now do looped writing, that is cursive. Okay? But we don't see him anymore in the rest of the books. She just throws this little tidbit in. But who else do they see? Pages 512, 513. Okay? We see Broderick Bode, who receives a plant. And they see the plant. They see Broderick Bode. They know Broderick Bode. How? He's a member of the Order of the Phoenix. All right? And we hear, page 512, and, oh, Mrs. Longbottom, are you leaving already? Harry spins around. He's trying to get the others not to notice because he sees Neville. And Ron, Neville! It's us, Neville. Have you seen? Lockhart's here. Who have you been visiting? Neville's grandmother. Friends of yours, Neville dear. Neville looked as though he'd rather be anywhere in the world but here. And she takes a look at the people. Oh, yes. Yes, I know who you are, of course. Neville speaks most highly of you. She's looking at Harry, but she also sees the others. Thanks, says Harry. You two are clearly Weasleys. Yes, I know your parents. Not well, of course, but fine people. And you must be Hermione Granger. What does that tell us? What does Neville do when he goes home for holidays? He talks about his friends. Do you think Neville had a lot of friends before Hogwarts, knowing the kind of person Neville was? Probably not. Hermione looked rather startled that Mrs. Longbottom knew her name. Yes, Neville's told me all about you. Helped him out of a few sticky spots, haven't you? He's a good boy. But he hasn't got his father's talent, I'm afraid to say. And she jerks her head towards the 2 beds at the end of the ward. Ron, what? Is that your dad down there? What's this? Haven't you told your friends about your parents, Neville? Notice he doesn't look at her. He looks up at the ceiling and just shakes his head. Well, it's nothing to be ashamed of. You should be proud, Neville, proud. They didn't give their health and their sanity so their only son would be ashamed of them, you know. I'm not ashamed. Ron, trying to look over the curtain. Well, you've got a funny way of showing it. My son and his wife. She turns, notice, haughtily to Harry. Ron, Hermione, and Ginny were tortured into insanity by you-know-who's followers. Hermione and Ginny clap their hands to their mouths. They can't believe what they've just heard. Ron stops trying to look. They were Aurors, you know, both of them. Very well respected within the wizarding community. Highly gifted, the pair of them. She starts to say something, and what happens? Neville's mom comes walking down with a piece of paper. Yes, Alice, dear, what is it? She comes edging down the ward in her nightdress. She no longer had the plump, happy-looking face Harry had seen in Moody's old photograph. Her face was thin and worn. Her eyes seemed overlarge. Her hair, which had turned white, was wispy and dead-looking. She did not seem to speak, or perhaps she was not able to. She made timid motions toward Neville, holding something in her outstretched hand. Again, Neville's grandmother says, "Very well, Alice dear, very well. Neville, take it. Whatever it is." Neville had already reached out his hand, into which his mother dropped an empty Drooble's blowing gum wrapper. "Very nice, dear," says Neville's grandmother, in a falsely cheery voice. But Neville says, "Thanks, Mom." His mother totters away. Why the verb totters? Why not walks?
She's not stable.
Okay? What is the description? And you might not be aware of this. I am, because my mom died of it just 2 years ago. What is the description she's given us?
Dementia?
Yes. This is somebody with Alzheimer's. I mean, that's the description. Hair goes white, gets all wispy, eyes are wide, but there's like nobody there. And she totters because she just kind of slides her feet. Okay? She doesn't walk normally. Neville looked around at the others, his expression defiant, as though daring them to laugh. But as they left, Harry was sure he saw Neville do what? Put the piece of paper in his pocket. Because his grandmother says, "Neville, put that wrapper in the bin. She must have given you enough of them to paper your bedroom by now." Neville sticks it in his pocket. Hermione, "I never knew." Ginny, "Nor me, Ron, nor I. Harry, I did. Dumbledore told me. Bellatrix Lestrange did that." Hermione, "The woman creature's got a photo of in his den? The creature that Hermione is trying to befriend?" Yeah. Yeah. So why is it important that Neville puts this in his pocket?
Says he cares.
Shows he cares? Why else? What is it? This is Neville's Christmas present from his mother. It is Christmas on the closed ward. Is his mother completely gone? No, but this is the only way she could communicate. And yet, her mother-in-law thinks of this as what? So when she says, "Neville, you must have enough of them to paper your bedroom by now," what does that literally mean? He has every one. He has kept them. Why? It's his connection. What connection does Harry have with his parents? But it wasn't given to him by them. He has nothing. Nothing. Okay? So what does this show us about Neville? What's it take to throw off an Imperious curse? Character. What did Dumbledore tell Harry about Neville when he asked Dumbledore about the Longbottoms in the Pensieve? He said, "I believe Neville sees his parents every holiday. His grandmother takes him." When did this happen? No, sorry. To Neville's parents. Shortly after Voldemort fell. Neville's parents have been like this for about the same amount of time Harry's parents have been dead. And Neville's been visiting them, apparently even as a baby. Okay? Christmas, spring, Christmas, Easter, summer, Christmas, Easter, summer. And even if you only did one visit a year, which I think is highly unlikely, okay? We're talking 30, 45 visits. And we're talking multiple visits, like over the summer, that he goes every few weeks. Okay? He's got a lot of these pieces of paper. Because I don't think she only gives it to him at Christmas time. All right, we'll stop there. And pick up next week, occlumency. Remember, your paper topics are coming up, so if you haven't run a paper topic past me,